Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone in the franchise world. My name is Paul Segreto, and this is Franchise Today, a statement we hear often from many franchise professionals. If only we could attract the right candidates to our franchise opportunity. And today on Franchise Today, we'll be joined by Rebecca Monet, the Chief Scientist and President at Zoracle Profiles, and we'll be discussing profiling for the right franchise candidates. But before we bring Rebecca on, of course, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Stan Friedman, who's live from Atlanta at the Franchise Update Conference.
Hi, Paul, and hello to our audience, live and direct from Atlanta, where Franchise Update Leadership Conference is about to kick off in about 4.5 hours. And it's going to be a very, very exciting conference this year. The energy is up. Met a lot of people just here early for some of these summits that take place today in advance of the actual conference itself. And it just feels like the mood in franchising is as good as it's been in a long time. And there are some very, very stoked up and excited people here to learn and take home the nuggets that we always get from this conference each year. And we love the fact that this is a conference that is so focused and so directed toward only those things relevant to the marketing and the awarding of franchises. It's a deep dive into a single topic, and for the next day and a half or 2 days, I would suggest that the bulk of the leadership and professionals involved in franchise development from all over the world are all here in Atlanta, Georgia, and all here for the same reason. So it's exciting times here, and wish you were both here with us.
Yeah, I wish I was there. It's my first time in a long time that I'm not at the Leadership and Development Conference, but I'm sure the likes of you and some of my other dear friends in franchising will fill me in for certain. And as you do mention about an exciting time in franchising, I do want to thank last week's guest, Paul Rocchio from the IFA, as he brought us up to speed on all the goings-on in the International Franchise Association, and certainly with all the legislation coming about, and franchising being under attack. He made perfectly clear that the sky is not falling.
Yeah, and Paul has always been one of my favorites from the IFA, and he's just such a giving and gracious kind of guy, but literally, he just sold himself so short, in my view, last week, in viewing himself as, quote-unquote, the association guy. Come on, Paul, you are the consummate franchise development professional. IFA is like a franchise, and all of us that belong to IFA are members of the franchise. We kind of act like franchisees. And how did most of us get here? How do all these hundreds of new companies that join IFA every year get here? Paul Rocchio is the guy that brings them on board and gets them oriented and gets them started. Paul, you're the consummate franchise development pro. I don't know anybody that does 200-300 deals a year, Paul. You do.
I couldn't agree more. Stan. And as we do every week, we do our little front of the house, Stan. So what do you have for us this week on front of the house?
Front of the house this week, Paul, I'm going to subtitle this front of the house as a new section of the front of the house. We're going to call this section, You Just Can't Make This Stuff Up. So I found a press release on the IFA website that I want to share with our audience today. And it talks about how the Obama administration states that it wants to give everyone a chance at the American dream. But when you hear what I'm about to share with you, you're going to raise an eyebrow and say, really? So here's the story. The Department of Labor has decided to label Riolanas, which is a small family-owned franchise business, as guilty without so much as even having a complaint being filed or a hearing by a judge. This, according to IFA newly seated President and CEO Robert Crescente. Crescente says, we align with those who believe that America stands for the rule of law and for due process. Public servants, even regulators, have a duty to administer those fundamental principles faithfully and fairly. Well, in the case of Riolana Reina, IFA has filed an amicus brief because they feel like this is just, you can't make this stuff up. So here's what happened. in her hometown of Conway, Arkansas, with the goal of giving moms a place to be able to buy and sell what she calls gently loved children's clothing and toys. Reiner started a consignment business, and she's franchised it. Her business idea was to use some software that she created to organize these events that she puts on, giving women the chance to run their own businesses by organizing these consignment sales. So today, her franchise businesses are in 22 states. She's got more than 60 locations and is continuing to grow. It sounds great, right? Well, what these franchisees do is organize these sales events, and then they utilize volunteer consigners. And the volunteer consigners provide a venue for buying and selling these used children's items, and in exchange for helping to run the shows, the volunteer consigners are awarded early access to the sale and the right to make purchases of popular items and things that they want. So they get first crack at the goods for their volunteer work. All of this sounds great, and it sounds like a really great business model for mothers to be able to get involved with. Well, Reiner's business is operating under something of a cloud of uncertainty. In 2013, Paul, the Department of Labor enters the scene and finds fault with her business model, despite the fact that nobody asked for them to take a look at the business. None of her franchisees or volunteers had filed any kinds of complaints, yet the DOL sends her a letter arbitrarily asserting that her volunteers are employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and they went so far as to send letters to all of her volunteers notifying them of their right to sue Rialanas for back wages, for liquidated damages, and for attorney's fees. I mean, this is insane. You can't make this stuff up. So what it looks like now, if this action stands, is that Reiner and all of her franchisees will actually be forced to pay the volunteer consigners minimum wage, overtime, back wages, and possibly additional fines. And so IFA's brief argues that Reiner is a victim of an overly aggressive bureaucracy and at the very minimum deserves the right to challenge this overreach in court. Crisante said these actions not only threaten Reiner's business and personal reputation, they also spread a cloud of uncertainty over her franchisees and other similar businesses that follow the same business model. This uncertainty hinders her ability to grow and sell additional franchises and help more moms in more communities. I mean, this is Conway, Arkansas, Paul. We're not talking California or Seattle. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like, excuse the term, a very crappy situation. And to that end, and on a lighter note, you know, we used to do a segment called "You've Got to Be Kidding Me," and I think I've got one from the news briefs today that I think falls into that category and probably will pile on to what you just said. And
tell us more.
The article I'm referring to is off QSR Web. Black bun Whopper, green poop, a big mess. You know, Stan, it doesn't seem to go bump in the night, but it's causing quite a stir for Burger King. The chain's new Halloween-themed Whopper is causing a lot of commentary on the Internet as thousands of customers have claimed to be shocked that their stool has turned green after eating the black bun. Some food experts, however, aren't surprised because with so many flavors and colors in the ingredients, the amount of dyes alone should make anyone nervous. It goes on to say, according to the Burger King website, the Whopper bun gets its dark look with the help of the popular A1 steak sauce as well as some other colorings. Although Burger King did not respond to the author's inquiry, the most common speculation is that the green stool is caused by the green or blue food coloring in the bun. Anyway, regardless, there was no shortage of comments about the Black Whopper on social media. Burger King's Facebook page, get this, Stan, has more than 1,260 comments from people who ate the burger, pooped green, and lived to tell their own scary Halloween story. And this is really where you got to be kidding me. Some people have even posted photos of the results of eating the Black Whopper. You got to be kidding me, Stan.
Too much information, Paul. That's all I have to say.
Way too much information. Maybe we ought to ship that over to Conway, Arkansas.
Well, the good news is, Paul, that of the tens of thousands of people who plug in and take this podcast, the good news is that most of them don't do it live. And for the sake of those on the East Coast where it is the noon hour, Paul, they're not listening to this over lunch. So there's the good news.
Well, I guess we just created the new fad in diets. Listen to franchise today.
You can't make it up, Paul. That's all I have to say is you can't make it up.
And it's good that we can laugh about some things, right, Stan?
Absolutely.
What else do we have in front of the house?
Well, let's talk a little bit about Next Gen, Paul, because I think we're coming up on a deadline there for Jennifer Cushell's program, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Actually, you and I were talking earlier. I thought it was tomorrow. It's actually the end of the month, so it's October 31st. But again, that's right around the corner. It's something that people need to look at. Now, what I'll do is I'll give a little bit of some insight into the Next Gen program. This was a program put together by Jennifer Cushell. And she went ahead and enlisted the IFA through the International Franchise Association Education program. And it's for, young franchisors throughout the world. And there's a specific, news release that just came out today, and I'm going to give you some insight from it, Stan. As soon as my computer will pay attention to me. And it basically says, individuals 21 to 35 owning a business that has been up and running in a span of 1 to 5 years are encouraged to join the Next Gen in Franchising global competition for a great chance to expand their business. And the IFA, together with Jennifer's company, Your Success Now, has developed Next Gen Franchising global competition, which is a search for young entrepreneurs who are driven to understand the how franchising really works and explore the various kinds of business models and have an opportunity to learn from the top industry experts and widen their social and business networks. The IFA truly understands the need for young, inspired, and business-driven beings to fully learn the ways within the industry of business. Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, Ace Hardware are just some of the few that started out small but have grown with the help of the franchising business model. So here's what they get. The winners of the competition will be able to attend the annual IFA convention in San Antonio in February 2016. They get a chance to attend the Next Gen Summit, where they'll be coached and taught everything about business for 2 days, which will also enable them to get industry-wide exposure and increase their network's reach. They'll also be able to interact with the top industry experts and leaders of the franchise industry. The prize of the competition, if summed up monetarily, Stan, amounts to over $5,700 with an irreplaceable learning experience to go with it. So interested parties can take the first step in achieving their entrepreneurial dreams by submitting the application, and this has to be done before October 31st, and you could do so at www.nextgenfranchising.org. Stan, tremendous opportunity, and you and I both have had the pleasure and the honor of meeting some of these individuals, and most recently, Alex Wazel, as he was here on his USA franchising. We both had a chance to spend time with him. Just a fascinating young individual, young entrepreneur with years and years and years of experience in that young mind with us.
Yeah, amazing young man. I got to visit with him quite a bit in D.C., and he's now headed back. He had some friends in the Carolinas that he went to visit as the last leg of his U.S. tour, where he spent the $2,000 scholarship money that he was awarded by Aziz Hashim, in addition to being a Next Gen winner this year at the IFA convention. And he took that money, as I mentioned last week, Paul, and instead of rejoicing in his newfound fortune of a couple of $1,000s, he's a young 22, 23-year-old guy, that's a lot of money, he invested that money in himself and extended his tour of the U.S. to be able to visit franchising capitals and companies all across the USA, culminating with the IFA's fan program in D.C., and I'm happy to tell you that I have been sharing his resume. I mean, this guy in early 20s is an attorney, graduated with a law degree at Warwick University. He's got like a 3.8 grade average, speaks 3 languages. I've got his resume in front of some people at Rourke, and because he's got a real interest in private equity, and I thought, wow, what a laboratory that could be for a young guy to begin a career in franchising. And then in conversation with one of my dear friends in the franchise world, Jennifer Yangu, who is the VP of Operations for Self-Esteem Brands for Anytime Fitness and Waxing the City, learned from Jennifer that they just awarded a master in Italy who's getting ready to roll out the brand there, and his resume is going to be looked at a little closer to home, with perhaps an opportunity for him to remain in franchising in Europe. So it's just, it's meeting guys like this, young people like this, that are the future of the franchising business. And it really, really feels great, Paul, to pay forward as a way to pay back all those that gave me a leg up in my career. In fact, as you introduced Rebecca, we're going to talk about somebody that's in her world that is the guy who's actually responsible for me being in franchising. So some people might want to blame him for me, but I thank him every day. It's just a small world, and we got to pay back by paying forward and helping this next generation get into our way of doing business and assure that the franchising business model's got legacy behind it with the next gen coming up.
Absolutely. And, Stan, we do have Jennifer Shell going to be a guest on Franchise Today. That's in a few weeks, right?
Yep, she'll be along in early November, and I'm really excited about having an hour on to talk with Jennifer. She's just she is a fountain of information and a ball of energy. She'll inspire those who don't know her to want to know her better. Yeah,
absolutely. And she'll be on November 4th.
I believe that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, the week before will be Ron Feldman from FranData, and of course next week we'll be joined by Mike Rosman, CEO at Bowfly. So we've got an exciting lineup of guests coming up all the way through the end of the year. And as I opened up the show today, Stan, I said, if only we could attract the right candidates to our franchise opportunity, and that's a very familiar statement made by many, many franchise professionals. And truly, they couldn't be more spot on, or could they? And this week, we're joined by Rebecca Monet, President and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. And we hope to be able to learn how Zoracle provides science-based and market-validated profiling tools, including its spot-on profile for the franchise marketplace, and also how Zoracle does this without using personality tests. And I hope also to learn more about the meta-analyst approach that uses 5 complementary sciences with a single tool. Just tremendous information. Rebecca, without further ado, welcome to Franchise Today.
Thanks, Paul. I'm here today with 2 of my mentors, Dan Friedman and Paul Segreto, so it's a thrill to be here.
Well, great having you, Rebecca.
Yeah, it's really great. It was a mouthful trying to say all that because, when you start talking about, personality tests, meta-analysts, complementary science, accuracy, predictability, and all that. Oh, my God, I didn't know this was going to be a science class today. And I guess the best thing to do is take us back to the beginning, because I know, prior to joining Zoracle Profiles, you had founded Proven Match. You've been very involved in franchising. Take us back to the roots. How did this all start?
Oh, my goodness. That really goes back and shows my age. I've been in this business 22 years as a franchise consultant and a developer of psychometric tools. And the number one goal always, of course, is to help franchisors do a better job of fully understanding their prospective franchisees to determine if there's compatibility and if this prospective franchisee can perform. And as you mentioned earlier, those kinds of things we cannot determine with personality tests. So even from day one, I was sort of anti-personality tests and wanted to find other ways to help our franchisors get to where they want to get, which is, can this guy perform? Does this guy fit? Will he retain? Will he validate well? That's what they want to know.
Well, they say that our business is as much art as it is science, and you really need a crystal ball almost to try to predict who it is that should be awarded a franchise, and mitigating against. You never guaranteed anything. People, as long as there's a human element to our business, people will always come back and surprise you somehow or another. But really, in today's world, you really need to mitigate against those things and reduce the possibility of failure by the things that you can control. So how does Zoracle do that, Rebecca?
Well, you just addressed a couple of really interesting things, and that is we want to reduce the risk. We want to mitigate that risk if possible. And we can't always, through our intuition or interviewing process or some other processes, know if this guy or gal is going to be right. So Zoracle takes this meta-analysis approach where we use 5 different sciences to assess a prospective franchisee. This gives us a much higher predictability than using a single science. So it's kind of like doing an expanded blood profile versus a single test in your blood chemistries. So it gives us a bigger view of that. And then, of course, the other piece of it that makes it even more accurate is we actually do some reverse engineering where we look at a franchisor's current franchisees, top, mid, and low performers, and look at the corollaries. What, from a psychographic perspective, is having this guy in Houston outperform this guy in Joplin, Missouri? Why is that happening? Besides the market might be a different size. What is going on that is causing that individual to succeed and the next guy to struggle? And then, of course, we set algorithms in place that compare the prospective franchisee directly to the top performers within each franchise organization. So it's a very simple process, but complex in terms of the science.
So how does it work, Rebecca? How does a franchisor get a candidate to actually sit down and do this? How invasive is it? How much time does it take? How do you get the candidate willing to do this?
Each franchisor does it differently, Stan, but most are just straight up with their prospective franchisees, and they let them know, just as you would do your due diligence on us as a franchise system, we need to do due diligence on you. And part of that is us getting a look into your business acumen and your values and how you might fit into the organization. So they use it right up front in their process of getting to know the prospective franchisee. Some franchisors even build it right into the request for consideration, where it becomes a single process so that development guy can know straight out of the chute how to interact with that prospective franchisee.
And how long does it take them? How long does it take to complete a profile for a candidate?
It'll take, depending on which modules a franchisor picks, anywhere from 5 minutes, which, boom, is super easy. It's got a lot of gaming technology built into it, so it gets people through really, really fast, up to about 12 minutes to get through.
And you can learn all of that with nothing more than 5 to 12 minutes of an investment of time. Who in their right mind would not want to do that as a franchisor?
I agree.
Which leads me to my question, Rebecca, because I know as you've been promoting this, at times you probably have to pull your hair out of your head and say, why aren't you using this? What are some of the reasons, or let's say some of the excuses that you're given about why they wouldn't use such a valuable tool?
I think the number one issue, Paul, is a misunderstanding, a preconception that this psychometric assessment is a personality test. And most franchisors who have used the DISC model, the Myers-Briggs, or any kind of a knockoff of a Big Five type of personality test have seen again and again that it does not do what it says it's going to do, or what that salesperson says it's going to do. It does not predict compatibility. It does not predict performance in any way, shape, or form. So the biggest challenge we have is getting our franchisors over that hurdle to see this is not a personality test. This is based on real science, not woo-woo science, but real science, and therefore it is highly predictive. And that's an issue every single day. It's so frustrating. I can't even tell you. For when we talk about profiling, people instantly think personality profiling doesn't work. Okay, I'm moving on. That's my biggest challenge.
Rebecca, how do you counsel franchisors to take the results that they glean from the profiles that a candidate sits for your profile, 5 to 12 minutes later you've got some data on what you can expect from this person, but to what degree or percentage of decision making would you tell a franchisor to weight this in their final decisions about somebody?
Oh, and that also is individual from Zor to Zor. As a scientist, obviously, I know how powerful this tool is, and encourage our franchisors to weight it heavily. And within a period of months, they usually do. So at the same time, you'll have that guy or gal that is a superstar franchise development person, been doing this 20 years, and they have a gut feel, they have an intuition, they have a sense. Never mind commission is associated to the buying of that franchise. So some don't weigh it as heavily as I would like until they begin to see the challenges when they don't, the validation issues, the satisfaction issues, the demand issues, the retention issues, the litigation issues. But most, I have to tell you, are using it directly out of the chute and weighing heavily in on what those statistics give them, saying this guy is good or this guy is not a good fit for us. Maybe for another franchise system, but for our system, they may not be a good fit.
We are live on Franchise Today with Rebecca Monet from Zoracle Profiles. The show is sponsored by FRM Solutions and Franchise Foundry. You know, Rebecca, we hear a lot about the Zoracle Spot-On tool out there, the Spot-On Profile tool that's out there. And, of course, everybody focuses in on right fit franchisee, but in relation to the actual franchise sale. But there's a greater aspect to this in reduced cost to support, greater retention, making sure that there's a stronger franchisee with respect to compliance and retention, increased performance, meaning better unit economics across the board. Why is that missed so much and so much focus just put on the franchise sales side?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Maybe you guys can tell me. But it's true. It's true. Again and again, the focus is on just bringing people on board and not concerning themselves with, is this a right fit? Even though logic would tell you, and statistics have proven, that we get a poor fit, we got a poor validator. We got someone who's not going to retain well. We got someone who's going to cost us more. In fact, we last year did some research on 580 top-performing franchisees, 43 franchise companies that participated in this research. And we're looking at top performers compared to system-wide franchisees. And we saw that B and C players needed 140% more resources for training and support than an A player, than someone that's doing well. And this isn't, brain science in terms of most franchisors know this. But when you start putting hard numbers to it, saying this guy is going to require 1.5 support people in the field, but this other guy is not going to require that. Now we can put dollars and cents to a common issue that all the franchisors are dealing with. The selection process is important, period.
How do you prove up the results, Rebecca? What do you have by way of, the data you're sharing about the right ones versus the not so right ones and the costs for supporting them. But when a franchisor looks at your tool and considers the value proposition that you're offering, how do you prove up its merits? How do you help these franchisors understand that this isn't woo-woo, this is real, and I can prove it? How do you prove it?
We do it a couple of different ways. The first is, of course, we show them the science itself, that we're not looking at personality, we're looking at, does this prospective franchisee fit into your franchise culture? Do they share your values? We know through Dr. Neil Churchill's work that every franchisor goes through various stages of growth, and an early stage franchise system needs a different franchisee than some franchise system that's much more established and buttoned down and plug and play. So we look at the stage of growth. We look at the core competencies of that prospective franchisee, knowing that if we can have those competencies complement the value proposition of the franchisor, we have something. So we show them those. And then, of course, bottom line statistics will show it. The research we did with Franchise Business Review, we frequently show that of here's what a poor fit will cost, here's what a good fit will do, here's how they're going to perform, and we just show them the statistics. Most know if they really look at their own system, they can look at those handful, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this. You've been in franchising as long as I have, where you just know that franchisee that's struggling out there requires a lot more resources and energy, never mind the damage to the brand equity and lost opportunity in that marketplace if this person is not a good fit and not doing well.
Could not agree more. I'm intrigued by this, Rebecca, and for as long as I've known you, I don't know that I've ever asked you to tell me more about how you got into this space, what motivated and even qualified you. I mean, what kind of credential do you have to bring to the table to create these algorithms? I mean, to put all this science in place. When I see Rebecca Monet, I see a franchise professional who people love to greet and meet and talk with, but there's a scientist living inside there. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this world and how it led you into this business.
It's actually kind of a funny and long story. I was a psychotherapist for years, and 99% of my clients were entrepreneurs. And they would come not with, marital problems or childhood problems. They would come with issues around why am I not as successful as I want to be? You know, what's getting in the way of that from an internal perspective. So after many years as a psychotherapist, one day I was asked to speak in front of a group of folks that were in business. It was the first time I had publicly spoken. Of course, was a nervous wreck, and turned out it was fine. We had 300 people in the room, and that sort of kicked off this adventure of traveling around the world, speaking about entrepreneurship and business ownership, and from a neurological and physiological perspective, what a business owner could do to be successful. And that naturally took me, after a few trainings and out in the world, meeting the franchise community and being recruited by Howie Bassick at that time, who was with FranNet. And I began to learn how what I was doing would also fit into the franchise world. And, of course, like most of us, once we see the franchise model for growing market share, you fall in love. It works, right? And so I got really excited because now there's an opportunity to help people avoid making mistakes, but still look at them from a psychological perspective, a neurological perspective, the human element, and what within a system would make them grow, build market share, etc. And that's what's fascinating to me about this whole science with Zoracle, is it's two things that are forever changing. The business, the franchisor, is changing. And that franchisee, day after day, is changing. He's not the same guy 5 years from now or 5 years ago. And so we have to be able to measure and predict who's this guy going to become and where is this franchisor going, because it's that will determine if this individual is going to be successful. Can he or she evolve and in the same way and at the same pace that the franchisor is?
And it takes nothing but 5 to 12 minutes to glean all that. I'm just mind-boggled by how much you can get with so little input.
The only reason we are able to do that is because we don't use a single science. So every question and every algorithm is buttoned down in such a way where a single question can be used in several different areas. So it takes about the same amount of time any assessment might take. The difference is the sciences and the algorithms. When you bring in that stages of growth, you bring in that culture, you bring in the Gallup work with the core competencies, it just makes it easy, fast, and you come back with a report that is very in-depth.
Stan, and I've heard you mention now several times, it only takes, 5 to 10 to 12 minutes. And it seems like from the testimonials that I've been seeing about Rebecca and Zoracle, that once they try and get involved with the spot-on tool, it seems like there's no coming back. What I've seen is Zoracle's an incredible tool for a franchise system. Finding the right fit is the most crucial piece of our qualification process. I am amazed at how accurate the spot-on profile is. And another one from a consultant says every assessment I've reviewed has been right on target from both the perspective of the franchisees and franchisor executives, taking the profiles. And I think it's just a matter of giving it a shot and trying it. But yet, Stan, as we know, sometimes, people are just very closed-minded and too often than not don't want to take advantage of a good opportunity.
Yeah, as you look at today's, even at this conference that's opening tonight, we're here talking about all of the metrics and all of the costs and all of the different ways to market for and find candidates and move them through the funnel and get those pipelines working. And, at the cost to generate a lead, whether it's advertising or whether it's broker commissions, you would think that it would just be a no-brainer that franchisors would view this opportunity to mitigate risk and to get that word sustainable in front of growth into their vocabularies. So how tough is that, Rebecca? How resistant are franchisors?
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift. It's going to require a paradigm shift because you're right. We go to these IFA conference, the FUM leadership conference, and many of the conversations are about number of internet leads, number of broker leads, how fast a franchise development guy calls someone back. And so those are hard, what we call biometric numbers. We're used to looking at that. We're talking with Zoracle psychographics. These are soft numbers. These are numbers that are different from person to person, from franchisor to franchisor. So it really requires a paradigm shift. I got to tell you, we recently did a top performer blueprinting on 40, and Paul Segreto, you were one of those 40 top performing franchise development guys. These guys are superstars. They're putting people in business. And you know what? when we looked at them, the markers that set them apart weren't about they were the first to call somebody back, that they, followed a system, that they did this or that. These were softer emotional and social intelligence markers like authenticity, transparency, the ability to create safety in a prospective franchisee in such a way that the prospective franchisee says, I trust this individual, and I am willing to put my future in this company's hands. That's an unbelievable amount of safety and trust that the franchise development guy has. That's not just about returning emails quickly or returning phone calls. It's above and beyond that. The superstars are doing something that the average performers in franchise sales aren't doing. They have incredible emotional and social intelligence, and even a few points difference in that area is a difference of a lot of money and a lot of sales.
Rebecca,
I was just going to say, I hear what you're saying, Rebecca, and as Stan is at the conference, I hope next week he'll report back on some of the findings that they're going to share at the conference. And specifically, the one that always just smacks me in the face at this conference is how many initial calls don't get responded to, and certainly don't get responded to in a timely fashion. So, Stan, please make sure, to share with us some of the highlights on next week's show.
Paul, I'm going to do that for certain. But even before then, I've got some stats that I wrote down when Darrell Johnson gave a little snapshot preview of some of the stats that we'll be hearing more about tomorrow when he gives and delivers his State of the Union research to the Update conference. But some quick notes that I jotted down kind of lead me to another question about franchisors perhaps reluctant to utilize a program like Rebecca's. What I heard from Darrell was in 2014, the average spend annually to generate leads for franchising across all of the information that Darrell measured was $167,000 to create your leads. Only 59% of the franchisors that were part of that survey track their lead sources, which to me is like a fundamental thing that really only 59% track their lead sources. $9,100 was the average cost per deal, and closed deals per application received came in at a whopping 26%. So all of these stats beg a question. Do franchisors just sometimes want to wink and nod and turn their head the other way, and are they fearful that they'll learn something about their candidates that, well, I just don't want to know, I need to award more deals? Is the problem with franchisors that are reluctant to utilize a tool like yours? I don't want to know what I don't know. I need more deals. Is that what prohibits some from doing business with you?
You just hit the nail on the head. It's so funny. It reminds me of two franchise clients of ours. One franchisor was using the tool, absolutely making every decision based around it, ramping up well, building the system. And, of course, the franchise development guys are calling me, I hate you. This is my mortgage. This is my kids' college tuition. And you're making me walk away from deals that I know I can sell. I'm a good sales guy. I can move this guy across, home base here. And so they get frustrated about that. In fact, one company, they had a replacement of the director of franchise development, or the VP of franchise development. And when the new guy came on, he used it for a while, loved it, and then realized he was having to turn away more than he was taking, and actually asked us to turn off the reports that did the comparison. He says, I want to be able to sleep at night. I don't want to know if this franchise or prospective franchisee is going to be successful. Don't give me a green, yellow, red light. Just give me the report. Tell me who they are so I know how to sell them. Now, that to me is sad, but it is true, Stan. That's what happens, is when your commission is dependent on this, you got quota you got to make, the last thing you want to hear is this candidate in that perfect territory with plenty of money and great smarts you have to turn down. They don't want to hear it.
Mind-boggling, but I guess it's still true.
It's that front end versus back end. It's the willingness to know you might make this sale on the front end, and if it's the wrong guy, what is it going to cost on the back end? And I know more and more franchisors are getting the franchise development guys and gals more involved in the back end and starting to compensate them based on retention, based on performance of that franchisee. And I think that's a wise move on our franchisors, so that franchise development guy, he's a good sales guy. He's going to sell, right? But what's going to cost us operationally to support someone, or in terms of lost revenue due to lost opportunity, or all of those things. So unless we create some kind of a connection there where we reward the franchise development guy for bringing on the right guy, not just bringing on anyone, I think we're going to continue to have this same give me a burger today and I'll pay you tomorrow kind of idea. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, for all those listening, take a look at ZoracleProfiles.com, and you'll see a lot of different information and a trial, which is something you should definitely consider. And, of course, Rebecca and her team will be circling back with you. But as we start winding down to the end of the program, Stan, I know there's a common thread that goes way back between you and Rebecca. Maybe you want to enlighten us.
I've always professed, Paul, that in life in general, in business in general, there's probably 6 degrees of separation between any two people that can sit down and have a 15-minute conversation and find some linkage between themselves. In franchising, I've kind of reduced that to 0.6 degrees of separation. And as I searched through Rebecca's profile on LinkedIn, I made a startling discovery that she says we've talked about before, and I remember now we have, but I'd completely forgotten that we share some lineage in the real estate world together, me with ERA, and prior to its being affiliated with Realogy. But that's kind of where I started in franchising, was in conversion franchising, and a guy named George Slusser showed up in your LinkedIn profile, and George is the guy who I give credit to every time I get the opportunity for introducing me to franchising and getting me out of radio way back when and into this world that I've come to love and be a part of for so many years. So you had some real estate in your life too, and with Realogy at that. Tell us about that.
You know what? I loved Realogy. When I came on board with Sendent, they were just in the process of breaking up into smaller, more agile companies and separated out the real estate portion of the business into Realogy. I got to tell you, I loved working at Realogy, and much like you, Stan, had 2 mentors within Realogy were my bosses that absolutely empowered me, and I learned so much from. So to have the George Slusser who and those types of people in our lives makes such a difference. And a big reason why I love what Jennifer Kuschel's doing and others, where we are paying it forward and bringing others up by encouraging them, mentoring them, etc., just like George did for you, and Ernie and Robin did for me with Realogy. Makes a big difference. It makes a big difference in everybody's life.
I've always said I love to collect people along the way, and franchising has been the perfect environment and platform for us as we grow and change careers. Sometimes within franchising we change shirts, but there's a handful of people that are just the keepers in life, and Rebecca, I'm really proud to include you in that circle of my peers.
Thank you, Stan. Yeah, we need each other. We're meant to help one another and be interdependent. That's how we're wired. None of us are islands. So for me to be able to pick up a phone and call you, Stan, and ask you a question about things you know that I know nothing about, or Paul, the same way, you've both been so generous with your time and expertise. And I know it's not just with me you're doing that, but we need more people stepping up and giving a hand up to that next generation, that next group of folks that will step into our shoes at some point. So it should be a commitment we all make, is to reach out and help one another.
Giving back and paying it forward, as Stan says, is truly the way to go. Rebecca, really appreciate you being our guest today. In addition to people going to your website, how could they learn more about Spot On Tool as well as other type of products and services from Zoracle Profiles?
Yes, go directly to the website. There's all kinds of training and material there at ZoracleProfiles.com, or call us directly at 760-207-2214, and we'll walk you through. In fact, we have this year's research going on. Any franchisor that wants to get involved, it's free to learn who your superstars are and why they are superstars, and why those guys that are struggling from a psychographic perspective. But very easy to get hold of us. Website or call us direct.
Yeah, also, everybody out there should definitely subscribe to your blog. There's a lot of great information on the blog as well. And I know you've been getting into quite a good rhythm of having webinars on a regular basis. So look out for invitations to those webinars, especially in the social media world. And also, tell us a little bit about your efforts with the IFA FBN meetings coming up in San Diego.
Oh, we're so excited. We have been officially sanctioned the FBN in San Diego. So it's been a while since we've had an FBN here in San Diego. We're going to have our first get-together on the 5th of November. So I'm looking forward to franchise executives and showing up at the reception on the 5th. We're believing we're going to pull from Riverside County and Orange County also. So it's just a wonderful time to network and help one another.
Great. Really good, and I really appreciate you being our guest today on Franchise Today. As with all of our segments of Franchise Today, you can listen on demand after the show at iTunes. Just look for Franchise Today. Stan, another great show on Franchise Today as we actually run rapidly into the beginning of our 7th year, which will be in January. It's hard to believe that Franchise Today has been on the air for that long, and proud to say that we've gone over the 170,000 listen mark, which to me is just remarkable, and I see no reason why 200,000 listeners will, on-demand listens will be right in our radar pretty quick, especially with the great guests we have coming on. Now, next week I won't be on the show. I'll be at a destination wedding for my son. But Stan, your guest will be Mike Rosman of Bowfly. Give us a little bit of insight of what our guests and our listener can expect. Stan?
Sorry about that, Paul.
Here you are.
We're back. It'll be an interesting conversation with Mike next week, Paul. Most people know of Bowfly from the perspective of being somewhat like a Match.com for franchising financing, getting candidates financed and helping them find the right banks that are interested in the concepts that they may be trying to move forward with. But there are some additional aspects to Mike's business that are very much as interesting to me as what Rebecca does in terms of helping franchisors better qualify candidates, doing some pre-quals. They've got a new program that they're going to talk about called B-Qual, and helping to kind of like people looking to buy a house. You are a much more valuable buyer when you're standing in front of a seller and telling them you've already been pre-qualified for the mortgage. You know, I'm not going to first go out and try to find the money. The money's already committed. I'm just trying to find the right house. Well, I think a seller becomes a little more motivated to maybe negotiate a better deal for you when you're pre-qualified. Bofly's got a program that Mike's going to talk about that's trying to help franchise candidates do the same thing. And I think then franchisors will have more incentive to try to make sure that this is the guy that they're, or the lady that they're going to do business with, because money's in hand or money's committed. So we'll be talking about that with Mike next week, along with some more of the value that his proposition brings to franchising through Bofly.
And that'll be great, and that's next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat station, of course. Stan, have a great conference with the Franchise Update Leadership Conference. My regards to all our friends in the franchise world that will be attending. And please, everybody, safe travels, both in and out of Atlanta. Stan, as always, love doing the show with you, and look forward to our next time on the air together.
Looking forward to it as well, Paul. Enjoy the wedding, and we'll see you all next week.
Until then, my name is Paul Segreto, wishing you the best, the very best in this great, great thing we call franchising. And Franchise Today is out.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.